Sarah Thompson's shift had been quiet, the kind most EMTs pray for: no catastrophic crashes, no heart attacks, no emergencies demanding her all. She wrapped her 12-hour shift just as the sun dipped below the horizon and stopped at a strip mall to pick up groceries before heading home. Her ponytail hung loose, her scrubs bore faint stains from earlier calls, but she was too exhausted to care. All she craved was a meal and rest. As she exited the small store, a paper bag in one hand and her phone in the other, she noticed a figure stumbling near the taco stand. At first, she pegged him as a drunken tourist, but then she saw the blood. The young man, barely in his mid-20s, wore a ripped Marine uniform. His right leg dragged, his side drenched red. His face was ashen, almost spectral, yet he staggered forward, clutching his ribs with shaking hands. Most people around didn't seem to notice, lost in their meals or screens. Sarah didn't pause. She dropped her bag and hurried over. "Hey, sit down, you're hurt." "I'm an EMT," she said, easing him to the curb as he sank, breathing heavily. His left shoulder was bruised and his ribs looked battered. She tore open a gauze pack from her belt, pressed it to his side, and checked for more injuries. Her hands moved instinctively, swift, skilled, focused, but then she caught movement. Two men approached quickly. One was tall, his black hoodie pulled low. The other, bald with tattoos snaking up his neck, moved with purpose. They weren't just passing by. They were zeroed in on her and the Marine. "Step back," the tattooed one growled, glaring at the injured man. Sarah positioned herself partway in front of the Marine, wary but confused. "He's hurt. I've called for help." "Nobody asked you," the bald man snapped. "Walk away." Her gut twisted. Something was wrong. The Marine whispered behind her, voice faint. "They followed me." The realization hit like a shockwave. These weren't random strangers. They'd tracked him, targeted him. And now they wanted him isolated. Her pulse raced. "You're not touching him," she said, standing firm. "Back off." The hooded man pulled something from his pocket, a flash of metal under the streetlight. Then chaos erupted. He lunged, aiming for the Marine's chest. Sarah threw herself sideways, taking the blow with her body. The knife sank into her arm. She screamed but stayed upright. A second slash ripped across her lower back as she twisted. She grabbed the attacker's wrist, fighting to disarm him. The other man kicked her ribs hard. She staggered but held her ground, shielding the Marine. He, barely conscious, tried to rise but collapsed. Sarah's vision blurred. Blood poured down her side. Another stab hit her shoulder. She lost count of the wounds. Her hands were slick, her legs shaky. "Help!" she yelled. "Someone call 911. Bystanders froze, some holding phones, filming, paralyzed. One voice broke through. "Leave her alone." The attackers froze, then bolted into the night. Sarah dropped to her knees. The Marine lay flat, eyes flickering. She pressed both hands to his side, fighting to stop the bleeding. "Stay with me," she whispered. The world spun. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Another EMT, off-duty, appeared, taking over pressure on the Marine's wounds. "You're losing blood," he said to her. "Hold on." She felt herself lowered to the ground, someone cradling her head, urging her to breathe. Stars blurred above, mixed with pain and sirens, then darkness. As she faded in and out, Sarah felt the warm trickle of blood down her side. Her limbs were heavy, her hands trembling, but her mind clung to one thought. Don't die. Not here. Not now. She wasn't thinking of herself. Her focus was on the Marine. Flashes came, red lights, shouting voices, the sting of antiseptic. She couldn't make out words, but pressure on her wounds grounded her. Time dissolved. When she came to, she was in an ambulance, an oxygen mask tied on her face. A paramedic loomed over her, repeating, "Sarah, Sarah, stay with me. We're almost there." Her throat was raw, her mouth dry. She wanted to ask about the Marine. Did he make it? Were the attackers gone? All she managed was a faint groan before slipping back under. Outside, the scene was controlled chaos. Police taped off the area, collecting statements from shaken witnesses. The taco shop manager provided blurry security footage. Most bystanders had scattered, but one, a college student named Miguel, stayed. He'd been the one to yell, scaring off the attackers. She took the knife for him, he told officers. She didn't flinch. In another ambulance, Corporal David Martinez clung to consciousness, gripping Sarah's bloodied jacket. His ribs were cracked, his internal bleeding severe, but her quick action had stabilized him. She saved him, one paramedic murmured to another. At the EA, Sarah was rushed in first. Her injuries were worse than expected. 7 stab wounds, 2 in her back, 1 in her shoulder, 3 along her side, 1 across her arm. A lung had collapsed, 2 ribs were fractured, but no major arteries were hit. A miracle. Surgeons worked for hours, stopping internal bleeding and closing wounds. She needed 4 pints of blood and 2 hours in the ICU. Still unconscious, she was moved to recovery. Next door, David was stabilizing, asking between pained gasps. The EMT. Is she okay? No answers yet. At the police station, detectives pieced together the case. Surveillance in Miguel's account helped identify the attackers' local gang members, known for targeting off-duty service members who crossed their drug and weapons operations. David had disrupted a deal weeks earlier, reporting it. Retaliation came swiftly and brutally, but they hadn't expected Sarah. That morning, Sarah's mother, Linda, received the call every parent dreads. Your daughter's hurt. She's alive, in surgery. Linda dropped the phone. Her husband grabbed it, voice shaking, asking, "Where? What happened?" Within an hour, they were at the hospital, pacing the ICU's sterile halls. The doctor emerged, weary but calm. She's stable. She lost a lot of blood, but the wounds were clean. No permanent organ damage. She's lucky and brave. Linda covered her mouth, tears falling. When can we see her? When she wakes. Hours later, Sarah stirred, disoriented. Tubes snaked from her arms, and bandages wrapped her chest. The sterile ceiling blurred above. She panicked briefly until a nurse leaned in. "You're safe, in the hospital. You made it." Her first words. "The Marine, is he okay?" The nurse smiled. "He's alive because of you." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. Relief flooded her. The last thing she remembered was blood, so much blood and darkness. "I thought he'd die," she whispered. "You saved him," the nurse said. "Everyone's talking about it." That night, a man in uniform appeared at her door. Tall, authoritative, he asked, "Sarah Thompson?" She nodded. "I'm Captain Alvarez, United States Marine Corps. Corporal David Martinez asked me to thank you." He placed a bronze challenge coin on her tray, engraved with the Corps' emblem. "This isn't given lightly." David insisted. Sarah stared, overwhelmed. "I just helped." "It's my job." Alvarez smiled. "You didn't just help. You stood between a Marine and death. That makes you one of us." Sarah Thompson woke to faint beeping, pain radiating through her like fire. Her eyes caught the sterile ceiling, 4 fluids dripping beside her. For a moment, she was lost, until the sharp ache in her side brought it all back. The blood, the knife, the Marine. She gasped, trying to move, her ribs screaming. Her arm was heavily bandaged, her mouth parched. A nurse appeared. "You're awake," she said softly, checking vitals. "Don't move. You're in the ICU, post-surgery." Sarah whispered, "The Marine? He's stable, alive because of you." Those words were a lifeline. Sarah's body ached, but something in her chest eased. She hadn't cried yet, but her hand gripped the sheets. The Marine, whoever he was, had survived. Her pain meant something. The nurse offered ice chips, explaining that Sarah had been out for 18 hours. 7 stab wounds, a collapsed lung, internal bleeding. She'd survived against odds. "Doctors call you a miracle," the nurse said. Sarah shook her head. "I just reacted." That evening, her family arrived. Her mom sobbed, clutching her hand. Her dad, stoic, kissed her forehead, eyes wet. "I thought we lost you," her mother whispered. Sarah managed a weak smile. "I'm still here." Her sister brought cards get well notes from hospital staff, MT colleagues, strangers. One read, "You saved one of ours." "Thank you." She didn't grasp its weight until Captain Alvarez returned, this time with Corporal David Martinez. He moved slowly, leaning on a cane, his face scratched, but his eyes fierce with gratitude. "Miss Thompson," he said, nodding. Sarah tried to sit up. "You're okay." "Thanks to you," David said, stepping closer. "I owe you my life. No words are enough." He handed her a folded unit patch. "This was mine. Now it's yours." Sarah's eyes widened. "I don't understand," Alvarez spoke. "Civilians rarely get a Marine patch." "Your courage wasn't ordinary. You shielded a soldier from danger. That's instinct, honor." David added, "In combat, we call it a guardian moment." "You're a guardian, Sarah." The visit was brief, emotional. David was still weak, and so was she. Before leaving, he turned. "You didn't just save me. You reminded every Marine what we fight for, people like you." Sarah stared at the patch, stunned. It was just instinct, she thought. Meanwhile, her story spread. A grainy cell phone video of the attack surfaced online, showing Sarah stepping in front of the Marine, pushing back an attacker, and taking multiple stabs without retreating. It was raw, brutal, real. It went viral overnight. Veterans shared it with captions like, "That's courage." Civilians called her a hero. Hashtags trended. Hashtag Shield of Honor. Hashtag Hero EMT. Hashtag Sarah Strong. News anchors said her name on morning shows. Editorials dubbed her America's backbone. Sarah, still in recovery, knew none of this, shielded from the frenzy. At the police station, leads poured in. The attackers were identified as gang members targeting veterans. Arrest warrants were issued. One was caught in a motel, the other was still at large. Charges included attempted murder and assault. But the city wasn't gripped by fear, it was pride. Pride in a woman who stood when others didn't. In her hospital bed, Sarah finally broke. Not from pain, but from the weight of it all, the gratitude, the attention, the realization of what she'd done. "I just wanted to help," she told her mom. Her mother kissed her forehead. "You did, sweetheart, more than you know." Sarah looked out the window. The sky was dusky blue. In the reflection, she saw herself bruised, bandaged, but alive. In the corridor, a group of Marines stood silently, waiting not for orders, but for her. Sarah didn't grasp how big things had gotten. One day, she was fighting for life in a hospital bed. The next, her face was on national news. A nurse, smiling, handed her a tablet. "You should see this." The screen showed a shaky video from that night, 30 seconds long but searing. Sarah stood in front of the Marine, arms out, taking a knife hit, then another and another. People screamed. She didn't budge. Her heart sank watching. She looked small, pale, fragile, but her eyes were fierce, unyielding. She handed the tablet back. "No more," she whispered. But the world had seen enough. The video hit 2 million views, then 5, then 10. It wasn't just military circles, it was global. People called her the Shield, the Amped Guardian, America's bravest. News debated Medal of Freedom nominations. Talk shows paid tribute. Veterans printed her image on shirts. She stood so he could live. Sarah wanted none of it. She turned off the TV, silenced her phone, and barred interviews. She hadn't acted for fame. It made her uneasy. The hospital added security to her room as flowers, letters, and strangers arrived. One man drove 200 miles to leave a note. "I served 2 tours. Lost men, you did what we pray someone would do for us. You're one of us." That hit harder than the knife. Meanwhile, David recovered 2 doors down. They hadn't spoken since he gave her the patch, but they checked on each other through nurses. On day 3, he visited. "Okay with visitors?" he asked. She smiled. "You're the only one who makes sense." They sat in silence, words unnecessary. "What do you say to someone you nearly died for or who lived because you bled?" Sarah spoke first. "Why were they after you?" He paused. "I stopped something I shouldn't have seen. They waited for me." "And you were alone?" "Yeah, until you weren't." The words lingered, a quiet vow. Outside, the Marine Corps took notice. Sarah embodied their values: courage, sacrifice, honor. A letter from the commandant arrived. "Miss Sarah Thompson, your selfless act reflects the highest duty, without obligation. You defended one of our own. You are forever a friend of the Corps, semper fidelis." Sarah cried while reading it. She refused interviews, talk shows, and fame. She wanted the focus on the Marine, the reason she acted. But messages flooded in from EMTs, veterans, families, kids. One read, "My daughter wants to be a paramedic because of you." Another, "I lost faith in people until you." "Thank you for showing good exists." She read them nightly. One morning, her mom brought a box. Inside, a silver pendant with the Marine Corps emblem and a note. "You re not just the shield, you're the heart. From us, 2nd Battalion." Sarah clutched it, tears falling. This wasn't about her anymore. It was about everyone who stood up, unarmed, untrained, because it was right. She'd survived. More than that, she'd become a symbol. 4 days after discharge, Sarah returned to her quiet San Diego home on a tree-lined street, where mornings were marked by barking dogs and garbage trucks. Her stitches pulled, her breath was short, but the calm was a relief. She'd told only family, close friends, and her supervisor she was back. The hospital offered security. She declined. She wanted normalcy, not protection. That first night, sleep eluded her, not from pain, though it lingered, but from the weight of memory. The knife, the blood, her screams, the Marine's face haunted her. She hadn't heard from Corporal David Martinez since their hospital talk, though nurses said he was recovering well. She hoped he was okay. Something had shifted in that room, a bond forged in fire, unspoken, deep. At 6:02 a.m., a knock came. Sarah, moving slowly in the kitchen, pouring tea, heard her mom gasp at the door. She peeked out and froze. Over 100 Marines in dress blues stood shoulder to shoulder across her lawn, boots aligned, faces solemn. At the center was David, leaning on a crutch, upright, proud. Sarah stepped onto the porch, gripping the railing, barefoot on cool concrete. She was speechless. The Marines were silent. Then, in unison, they saluted, the snap of their arms echoing. Sarah's eyes filled, her heart pounding. David stepped forward. "You stood between death and one of ours," he said, voice carrying. "Today we stand for you." Neighbors opened windows, doors. Some filmed, some clapped, others watched in awe. Kids peeked out. Veterans stood at attention. David continued, "We don't forget those who protect our own, in uniform or not." 2 Marines approached, one with a folded American flag, the other a wooden box. "On behalf of the Marine Corps, we present this flag, a symbol of sacrifice," the first said. The box opened to reveal a large challenge coin, one side the Corps' emblem, the other engraved, "To the shield, from those you stood for." Sarah took them, hands shaking. "I don't deserve this," she whispered. David stepped closer. "You earned more. You gave without question. That's a warrior." Her mom, crying, touched her shoulder. The Marines held their salute. A voice shouted, 3 cheers for EMT Thompson. They roared, "Hurrah!" "Hurrah!" Sarah wept, overwhelmed. David placed a hand on her shoulder. "You didn't just save me, you changed us." The Marines dispersed, boots tapping rhythmically. Some tipped hats, others nodded. No media, just honor. David stayed, sitting with Sarah on the steps as the sun rose. "I didn't expect this," she said. "You deserve what we feel when someone has our back," he replied. Silence settled. Then he asked, "Can I visit again?" She smiled. "I'd like that." Sarah looked at the flag and coin. It felt unreal, but it was. She'd come home to something greater respect earned not by rank, but by courage that bled for a stranger and never backed down. Weeks passed. Sarah's story spread beyond San Diego. A neighbor's video of the Marine salute went viral. Headlines read, "Civilian M2 risks life for Marine, gets hero salute." She ignored interviews, talk shows, and emails seeking her story's rights. She didn't act for fame, she acted because someone needed help. That was her. Healing was tough. Stab wounds left muscle damage and her ribs were tender. Her hand, which grabbed the blade, struggled to move. Twice weekly physical therapy was grueling. Doctors said recovery could take a year. Some days, the pain was unbearable, not just physical, but mental. The worst wasn't the stabs. It was the replay, the moment she thought she'd die, the helplessness, the fear she'd hesitated too long. But she wasn't alone. David kept his promise, visiting weekly. At first, he shared recovery updates. His leg and injuries were healing fast. Soon, visits became more coffee on her porch, talks about dreams, music, his deployments, her wildest EEE. A bond grew, not just from trauma, but from resilience. David helped her reclaim her strength. One day, after a rough therapy session, Sarah returned frustrated. Her hand trembled, unable to open a jar. David waited on her porch with 2 bags. "What's that?" she asked, irritated. He grinned. "Your worst enemy." He pulled out Lego sets. "What the hell?" she laughed. "Motor skills, Marine-approved rehab." They spent hours building a battleship. It took her 20 minutes to place one piece, but she finished. She cried not for the Lego, but for progress, however slow. Time passed. Sarah returned to the station on light duty, training new EMTs and leading workshops. Her team embraced her. Her name grew in military circles. Invitations came to speak, not just at ceremonies, but about courage, civilians stepping up, facing danger with only the purpose as armor. At a joint Army-Marine fundraiser, she spoke to hundreds of soldiers, officials, and civilians. "I didn't think about what I'd lose," she said. "Only what I could save." The room stood applauding. David walked her to her car, she in a black dress, he in formal blues. "Ever think how different it'd be if you didn't stop?" He asked. "All the time," she said. They stood in silence. Then David took her hand, the one that grabbed the blade and held it. Something shifted. Later that month, Sarah was invited to Washington, D.C. The Marine Corps nominated her for the Distinguished Public Service Award, their highest civilian honor. She was stunned. At the intimate ceremony, standing before the commandant, her heart raced harder than during the attack. She was just a woman who did what was right. David, in the front row, nodded. Back home, life wasn't normal. It was better. Her hand regained movement, and scars faded to pink. She slept without nightmares. Neighbors greeted her with warmth, respect. One day, she saw a boy fall off his bike. She ran over, checked him, calmed him, helped him up, just like before. She was still Sarah, the one who ran toward danger. Her act rippled. A woman in Arizona saved a driver from a burning car, citing Sarah's courage. Letters poured in from veterans, kids aspiring EMTs. A 12-year-old named Sophie wrote, "You showed me girls can be strong. I want to help people like you." Sarah cried while reading it. She didn't want fame, but this spotlight felt different. It changed things. David, back on limited duty, visited every weekend. They walked the pier, tried food trucks, and watched planes fade into the sky. He finally shared why he was attacked. He reported a smuggling ring dealing stolen military gear. The stabbing was a hit. "They wanted me dead," he said on a quiet beach. "If you hadn't stepped in, I wouldn't be here." Sarah stared at the ocean, so I saved a whistleblower. "Now I'm in an action movie." He laughed. She smiled. They found peace in these moments. He called her "Sir." She called him "Trouble." It wasn't flirtation. It was survival. Permission to laugh after facing death. The White House called. The president wanted to meet her. Sarah thought it was spam until a government SUV arrived. In a private ceremony, she was honored as a civilian who served without a uniform, standing beside generals and a Medal of Honor recipient. David nodded from the back. At home, she placed the medal beside a photo of her parents and the Lego battleship. David turned serious. I don't want to just visit. I want to be there for you. Her heart raced. He wasn't just thanking her. He was saying he loved her without the words. I was hoping you'd say that, she said softly. The next morning, David made coffee in her hoodie, humming off key. She smiled from the doorway. She'd bled here, screamed here, but now she felt safe, not because she was healed, but because she had hope. He handed her a mug. Morning, hero. Still not a hero, she said. He kissed her forehead. Still disagree. In an interview, she was asked what she thought that night. Nothing, she said. There was no time. Just someone in danger, and I had 2 feet, 2 hands, a heartbeat. That's all I needed. Another unforgettable quote. 6 months later, Sarah's life had a new rhythm. The media frenzy faded, but her world had shifted permanently. She eased back into emergency calls, though scars ached and flashbacks hit during intense moments. She learned to breathe through fear, growing stronger. David stayed by her side, their bond deepening beyond survival into purpose. One morning, a wax-sealed letter arrived from the Secretary of Defense, inviting her to speak at Arlington's Armed Forces Day. She wasn't a soldier, but her courage spoke to all. The letter called her a civilian with a warrior's heart. She sat with it for an hour. David smiled. You going? She nodded. If I can speak for those who showed up without a uniform, I will. At Arlington, thousands filled the grounds, flags waving, bagpipes humming. Sarah, in a navy dress with her Marine pin, saw survivors like her in the crowd, civilians who acted in crises. In the third row sat her Marines, the ones from her lawn, here as family. At the podium, her legs shook, but she spoke. I'm not a soldier. I've never trained for battle. But courage doesn't always wear a uniform. Sometimes it's bleeding on a sidewalk, refusing to move. Sometimes it's dragging someone to safety, because they'll die if you don't. Sometimes it's caring when it's easier to walk away. I acted because I could. She paused, tears forming. This is for every nurse who stayed late, every teacher who shielded a child, every bystander who said, not today. You don't need stripes to stand for something, just heart. The crowd stood, some crying, many saluting. A cadet whispered, she's why I joined. Sarah and David walked through the cemetery, hand in hand, past white headstones. At one, David stopped a Marine who'd saved him overseas. He placed a coin on the grave, whispering, we're still paying it forward. To Sarah, he said, they want me to train recruits' resilience, leadership. I said, only if you come. She laughed. I'm not joining the Corps, Martinez. Not as a soldier, as a speaker, a mentor. Showing bravery isn't just combat, it's compassion. She smiled. I'm in. Her story became a case study for first responders and medics. She spoke at bases, schools, held widows' hands, and hugged military kids. She laughed on talk shows, cried in churches, but stayed the EMT who didn't run the woman who stood between a blade and a stranger. On the attack's anniversary, she returned to the taco shop. David waited across the street. She placed a red flower on the curb, whispering, thank you for letting me be needed. A girl tugged her jeans. Are you the hero lady? Sarah knelt. Just someone who helped. The girl smiled. I want to help people too. Sarah hugged her. Then you already are. She crossed to David, who took her hand. The sun set, But her story wasn't over. Far from it.